Cinema Worms.
Discussing everything from Grima Wormtongue to the Shy Halud.
I'm Sabib.
And I'm Linz.
And this is Cinema Worms Podcast.
Damien Chazelle is the youngest person ever to win the Academy Award for Best Director at age, wait for it, 32.
Since Z is off gallivanting on yet another continent, nice for some, I saw Hot Milk by myself. Directed by and written by Rebecca Lenkiewicz, who we talked about recently as having also written the screenplay for The Salt Path, a fact which, as of my research, has been apparently scrubbed from her Wikipedia, possibly in light of the recent allegations which have come out about the original creator of The Salt Path, #grifter. Not Lenkiewicz's fault. She also wrote 2022's Disobedience, an adaptation of Naomi Alderman's novel, and so it makes sense that she would continue her trend of adaptations with Deborah Levy's Hot Milk, which was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2016. I read Hot Milk in September of 2019, and if you're wondering how I know something so specific, it's because I keep a spreadsheet of every book I've read since 2015 like an absolute dork. Nerd though I might be, it comes in handy sometimes when you want to have a specific date that no one cares about except yourself. Hot Milk is Lenkiewicz's directorial debut, and we've seen quite a few of those over the last year, often by female directors, which is a really fantastic trend. Long may it continue. Hot Milk stars Emma Mackey, who you might know from the TV show Sex Education, or her performance as Emily Bronte in the 2022 film Emily. Mackey plays Sophia, an anthropology student writing her thesis about Margaret Mead, and her mother Rose, played by the absolute powerhouse that is Fiona Shaw, who you'll probably know from just, oh my god, everything, including the huge franchise tanked by its creator that we don't want to talk about, where she played Petunia Dursley. At TV terms, she's been in disparate things like Fleabag, Killing Eve, Andor, and many more. In 2020, Fiona Shaw was listed at number 29 on the Irish Times list of Ireland's greatest film actors, and I would like to ask Ireland, why not rank our queer queen higher? What are you doing? Now, Sophia and Rose's relationship is a complicated and a strained one, since Rose has been a single mother since Sophia was a child, and the film makes the most of Rose's bitterness and resentment around this, as the mother-daughter duo attend a special clinic to address Rose's inability to walk consistently, which the doctor, played by Vincent Perez, wants to address with specific talk therapy, which delves into her past history and using less medications. Rose spends pretty much all of her time in a wheelchair, and regardless of the fact that she can find or reach things by herself, often demands that Sophia fetch them for her regardless of what her daughter is even doing at the time, and she doesn't even ask in a particularly nice way. Sophia reacts to her mother's strident nature and frequent rants with sullen silence most of the time, and has purposefully distanced herself emotionally. And when Sophia meets Ingrid, played by Vicky Krieps, whose filmography includes The Phantom Thread, there's an immediate attraction. But Ingrid is just another hard-to-reach character, a kind of emotional island who occasionally lifts a causeway or two out of the ocean to tempt Sophia along the path before letting it sink and leaving her new lover floundering. I want to mention the title of the Guardian article written about this film, because it is just so terrible, and I quote, "Fiona Shaw is a fierce fly in a simmering erotic soup." Aval, what is wrong with you, Peter Bradshaw? Just stop it. And second of B, I understand the meaning, if not the absolutely horrific title of that review. I wouldn't necessarily have called Hot Milk erotic, though, because that to me suggests a heavier reliance on the sexual component to the relationship between Sophia and Ingrid than the film actually has. What is more interesting to me is these little digs that Rose takes at her daughter and how they kind of play out in the moment, and then how they ripple into what happens later on. "You always had trouble finishing things," Rose says sniffly, and she's referring to Sophia's thesis here. And indeed, no matter what emotional performance Ingrid lays down, or even how transparent it seems to be, as she kind of vacillates from one emotion to the next to elicit whatever reaction she wants from Sophia. Sophia still seems to have trouble, even though she can see through it at some points, actually tearing herself away from an entanglement that repeatedly hurts her feelings. It's almost impossible to talk about this film without discussing the end of it. But there are no spoilers here at Cineworm, so I can't. I'm under a gag order. Suffice to say that, in my opinion, Sophia's last line of dialogue brings everything together with a neat and incredible bow. I would do quite a lot to be able to interview Lankovitz about this, as well as the use of my favourite operatic song of all time, When I Am Laid in Earth, aka Dido's Lament from Dido and Aeneas, which I recognise from the first two notes because they're iconic, and I was really ecstatic about this because I had just written a scene using that same song in my most recent book. And when you consider what's happening in When I Am Laid in Earth, Dido is talking to her handmaiden Belinda about how Aeneas broke up with her because he said that the gods told him to do it, which is technically true from his point of view, but which she considers a fabulous lie and is like done with him. And she's like, well, when I'm dead, like just don't even think about me. I mean, remember what happened to me, but like don't worry, it's all good. There's a lot of meaning within that, and I think it really layers the meaning of hot milk when you add that particular element in. This kind of dramatic telling people what to think about you and who we really are, and kind of archaeologically digging down into the emotional bedrock to get at the horrific little oil well springs of trauma that's happened in our pasts. And I'm dying to know whether Legovitz had that particular piece in mind from the start, or whether that was added in later by whoever was handling the sound. What I would say is, I highly recommend this, even if you haven't read the book. The book is also pretty good. I remember liking it. It is an uncomfortable read, and this is a slightly uncomfortable watch in some ways because of the strained relationship, but it is so, so interesting. So, I highly recommend it. Go and see Hot Milk. Our local cinema has been showing various old films recently. We watched the 30th anniversary of Clueless, as well as the 18th anniversary of There Will Be Blood, and they're also showing a few others, including 2014's Whiplash, a film that I have somehow managed to miss entirely seeing until now, even though it was very readily available on streaming platforms. Whiplash was written and directed by Damien Chazelle, who is probably most famous now for making 2016's La La Land, although I much preferred his 2022 black comedy about early Hollywood Babylon. Whiplash gained Chazelle an Oscar nomination, and it's not hard to see why. The film stars Miles Teller as Andrew, a talented and ambitious drummer recruited by tempestuous Fletcher, the abusive conductor of Andrew's university band, who is just like an absolute nightmare of an authority figure. Teller, who starred in the YA dystopian Divergent series and more recently in Top Gun Maverick and The Gorge, has been pretty hit or miss for me, mostly misses, but this is maybe his greatest film ever. Fletcher is played by J.K. Simmons, who has a really varied body of work across film and TV and Broadway, which I didn't know. He's been in some of the Spider-Man films, he was in Juno, Palm Springs. Weirdly, he's played Santa on multiple occasions. And oh, I did not know this before I began to research Whiplash. J.K. Simmons has also voiced the yellow M&M in adverts since 1996. So if you came to Cinema Worms for inexplicable movie and TV trivia, you've sprung a deep well here, and now we can all paddle around in it. So essentially, Whiplash follows 19-year-old Andrew as he tries his best to achieve the impossible, pleasing Fletcher, or at least meeting Fletcher's increasingly insane demands of Andrew's time and abilities. If you haven't seen this film, I do highly recommend it, but go in knowing that it is incredibly intense. You will be clutching the arms of your seat, you will be holding your breath. Andrew, who has been raised by a single father and is pretty awkward around his peers, who seem to be kind of more well off than him, doesn't seem to have received much positive attention for anyone other than his dad, and so Fletcher becomes this parental and kind of godlike figure in Andrew's life, both hated and revered simultaneously. Andrew's dialogue is quite sparse, leaving Teller to convey the entire spectrum of the character's emotions wordlessly, and while I haven't enjoyed that much of Teller's other work, I admit he is magnificent in this film. At any given moment, we can see the shades of frustration, humiliation, fear, loathing, both for himself and for Fletcher, and underneath it all is this burning desire to be something, to be somebody the world remembers, to be one of the greats. It is literally all he wants to do in life. And it's this ambition that drives Andrew on far beyond the point where another, maybe more sensible character with better boundaries might have given up. And it creates this supremely tense atmosphere that just brimming with low-key menace. The violent drumming, often accompanied by shots of Andrew's bloodied hands and his sweat like dripping onto the kit, reflects a building violence in the relationship between Andrew and Fletcher as the teacher pushes him harder and harder, and the student begins, eventually, to push back. Now, Fletcher does have his reasons for doing what he does to students, and that motivation plays an intrinsic part in why the film builds and ends the way that it does. I don't want to spoiler you, even though it has been out for 11 years, so you're a little behind if you haven't seen it, but there's no spoilers here at Cineworld unless we flag it up. So just know that I found myself holding my breath during the climax, hoping that it was all going to turn out the way that I thought that it might, given what the narrative had been doing up until that point. And that feeling seemed to be echoed by the people around me, who were also uttering little gasps and like moans of despair. It's always a really nice thing when you can hear people actually reacting to a film, like genuinely unable to stop their reactions because they are so emotionally compelled by what they're seeing on screen. I think when you've done that, you have created something incredible. And the music is great too. It's never a chore to listen to the same thing that the studio band is practicing over and over again. So if you like Whiplash, and you want a similarly musical film, but maybe without the abuse, in a much more pleasant kind of way, which also deals with a similarly ambitious musician, I recommend Blue Giant, which is also kind of jazzy and animated and came out in 2023. So if you haven't seen Whiplash, definitely see it, but also see Blue Giant for a gentle version of this.